welcome back to Friday Reads, where we help you find your next read. I'm Jill, and Jules is out this week, so I'm here with Holly. And today we are going to, January's full of like new you, new me, new year, new you. So we thought we'd take a break from that and have you read about other people. So we're going to talk about memoirs today. So I'm going to hand it over to Holly, and she's going to start us off.
Hi, the first memoir I want to talk about is Becoming by Michelle Obama. This book was published a few years back, just after the Obamas left the White House. And what I really liked about reading this book was that I felt like I was listening to a friend tell her story. It's very easy read, and she's a good writer. It was fun to listen to learn about the stories about Michelle and their journey to the White House and everything, but it was more fun for me to learn about how their relationship developed between Michelle and Barack. So, pretty good story of memoirs called Becoming by Michelle Obama.
I have read that one, and I agree. The stories about her and Barack are great. So my first pick is Crying in H-Mart by Michelle Zonner. This is an unflinching, powerful memoir about growing up Korean American, losing her mother, and forging her own identity. In this story of family, food, grief, and endurance, Michelle Zonner proves herself far more than a dazzling singer, songwriter, and guitarist. With humor and heart, she tells of growing up one of the few Asian American kids in her school in Eugene, Oregon, of struggling with her mother's particular high expectations of her, of painful adolescence, a treasured month spent with her grandmother's tiny apartment in Seoul, where she and her mother would bond late at night over heaping plates of food. As she grew up, moving to the East Coast for college, finding work in the restaurant industry and performing gigs with her fledgling band, and meeting the man who would become her husband, her Koreanness began to feel ever more distant, even as she found the life she wanted to live. It was her mother's diagnosis of terminal cancer when Michelle was 25 that forced a reckoning with her identity and brought her to reclaim the gifts of taste, language, and history her mother had given her. So, Crying in the H-Mart.
Okay, so the rest of the books that I picked have kind of a Wisconsin interest to them. And the first one is somebody you'll probably recognize, Michael Perry. I'd like to recommend his book Population 485. All of his books have a memoir twist to them. But this one is funny like the rest. But I have my own connection to this is that it talks about some of his experiences as a first responder. And my husband works as a first responder and paramedic, so it's kind of an interesting connection. I also like reading Michael Perry because he too, when you read his stories, it's like talking to somebody rather than reading a nonfiction book. So any of Michael Perry's books are good, but I recommend this one, Population 485.
And my next one is new. It's All About Me, My Remarkable Life in Show Business by Mel Brooks. At age 95, legendary Mel Brooks continues to set the standard for comedy across television, film, and the stage. And now this Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony winner shares his story in his own words. All About Me charts Mel Brooks' meteoric rise from Depression-era kid in Brooklyn to the recipient of the National Medal of Arts. Whether serving the United States Army in World War II or during a burgeoning career as a teenage comedian in the Catskills, Mel was always mining his experiences for material, always looking for the perfect joke. His iconic career began with Sid Caesar's Your Show of Shows, where he was part of the greatest writers' room in history, which included Carl Reiner, Neil Simon, and Larry Gilbert. After co-creating both the mega-hit 2,000-year-old man comedy albums and classic television series Get Smart, Brooks' stellar film career took off. He would go on to write, direct, and star in The Producers, The 12 Chairs, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, High Anxiety, and Spaceballs, as well as producing groundbreaking and eclectic films, including The Elephant Man, The Fly, and My Favorite Year. All About Me offers fans insight into the inspiration behind the ideas for his outstanding collection of boundary-breaking work and offers details about many close friendships and collaborations he had, including those with Sid Caesar, Carl Reiner, Gene Wilder, Madeline Kahn, Alfred Hitchcock, and the great love of his life, Anne Bancroft. So, All About Me, Mel Brooks. You might have to put it on hold, and it's a little popular.
I didn't know Mel Brooks was in Spaceballs.
I didn't know that either. He wrote it or something.
Oh. I learned something new. Here's another Wisconsin author, Elizabeth Burke. My favorite book by Elizabeth Burke is her Christmas story, The Handmaiden and the Carpenter. I actually got to meet her once, and she was a wonderful person. But this is her book, her memoir, in which she talks about a role reversal between her and her parents. She changes as an adult from being the child that has been cared for her whole life into being the caregiver of her parents. Her parents are going down the road to dementia, and I think that it's just a really meaningful book to read. From helping with the program that we offer every month at the library called Memory Cafe, I know that people really who take care of family members suffering from dementia, they really appreciate being able to hear the stories of others who are going through a similar experience. So whether or not you have someone like that in your life, this is a really good book of memoirs to help you get through a trying time. Elizabeth Burke.
She's from Wisconsin, huh?
Yeah.
Huh. My next pick is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. This is for readers of Atul Gawand, Andrew Solomon, and Anne Lamott, a profoundly moving, exquisitely observed memoir of a young neurosurgeon faced with terminal cancer diagnosis who attempts to answer the question, what makes life worth living? At the age of 36, on the verge of completing a decade's worth of training as a neurosurgeon, Paul Kalanithi was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. One day he was doctor treating the dying, and the next he was a patient struggling to live. And just like that, the future he and his wife had imagined evaporated. When Breath Becomes Air chronicles Kalanthi's transformation from a naive medical student, possessed, as he wrote, by the question of what, given all the organisms die, makes a virtuous and meaningful life, into a neurosurgeon at Stanford working on the brain, the most critical place for human identity, and finally into a patient and a new father confronting his own mortality. Paul died in March 2015 while working on this book, yet his words live on as a guide and a gift to us all. So it's kind of a different take from doctor to patient.
Mm-hmm. When that book first came out, I recognized it as like an inspirational read. So, my next book is called Return to Wake Robin, and the author is Marnie Maminga. Wake Robin is a lake in northern Wisconsin by Hayward, and they have this author and her family had a cabin up there. I don't know if you would, a lot of people in Wisconsin have the tradition of going up north to their cabin, and if you don't have that tradition in your own family, most likely you know somebody who does. But the way she describes her cabin and the time there, as you're reading it, you really kind of feel like time stops. You're transported to the familiar lake waters of northern Wisconsin. And it's a story about how place shapes the people and inspires people to create connections and develop relationships through those connections. And I think for people living in Wisconsin, you can connect to this through that story of the tradition of going up north. So I think this is a good book for pretty much anybody. A nice story of memoirs. Thank you.
My next choice is Good Talk by A Memoir and Conversations by Myra Jacob. What's different about this one is it's a memoir in a graphic novel form, so it's a little bit different. Some people like that way of books like that. Myra Jacob's touching, often humorous, and utterly unique graphic memoir takes readers on a journey as a first-generation American. At an increasingly fraught time for immigrants and their families, Good Talk delves into the difficult conversations about race, sex, love, and family that seem to be unavoidable these days. Inspired by her popular BuzzFeed piece, 37 Difficult Questions from My Mixed-Race Son, here are Jacob's responses to her 6-year-old, Zakir, who asks if a new president hates brown boys like him, Uncomfortable relationship advice from her parents, who came from the United States from India 1 month into their arranged marriage, and the imaginary therapy sessions she has with celebrities Bill Murray and Madonna, Jacob also investigates her own past, from her memories of being the only non-white fifth grader to win Daughters of an American Revolution essay contest, to how it felt to be a brown-skinned New Yorker on 9/11. As earnest and moving as they are sometimes laugh-out-loud funny, these are stories that have formed one American life. So, good talk.
All right. My last book is actually a cookbook. It's called Sir, and it's a compilation of recipes and stories and very brief histories from the American legions across the United States. The author who compiled all of these stories and recipes has ties to Kimberly. She has family that lives here in Kimberly.
Oh, that's cool.
And this book was recognized by the American Library Association with their National President's Award for Excellence. The interesting thing about this book is that here's a picture of some of the old Legion cookbooks. It includes recipes from old cookbooks that were created, through time in association with each of the wars that our country has been through. And it's divided into sections according to those wars. So here's the Korean War section. My dad served in the Korean War as a cook. And I'm not going to show you the thing that I recognized here because that was not my favorite meal he made. But I am going to show you this page, not for the recipes on it, but just so you can get an idea of how they combine recipes with stories from veterans across the United States about the meaning of the recipe or their experience serving. So this is a really nice book. It has lots of different reference articles in the back too, and lots of great recipes. And I really appreciate that the author has local ties. So
Yeah, that's cool.
very, very nice book. Thank you.
My last one you probably already read, but if you haven't, you should get on it. Educated by Tara Westover. Tara Westover was 17 the first time she set foot in a classroom. Born to survivalists in the mountains of Idaho, she prepared for the end of the world by stockpiling home-canned peaches and sleeping with her head for the hills bag. In the summer, she stewed herbs for her mother, a midwife and healer, and in the winter, she salvaged in her father's junkyard. Her father forbade hospitals, so Tara never saw a doctor or nurse. Gashes and concussions, even burns from explosions, were all treated at home with herbalism. The family was so isolated from mainstream society, there was no one to ensure the children received an education, and no one to intervene when one of Tara's older brothers became violent. Then, lacking any formal education, Tara began to educate herself. She taught herself enough mathematics and grammar to be admitted to Brigham Young University, where she studied history, learning for the first time about important world events like the Holocaust and civil rights. Her quest for knowledge transformed her, taking over oceans and over continents to Harvard and Cambridge. Only then would she wonder if she traveled too far, if there was still a way home. So this is very shocking how they lived, but still very fun to read. So thank you for joining us. And Holly, thank you for being here for Jules. We'll be here next week. Like, share this video. If you have a memoir that you like, put it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.